Today, we're diving into one of the most intense and honestly misunderstood stories in the book of Genesis, the destruction of Sodom. Now, this is an ancient account of divine judgment, for sure, but it's also so much more. It's really a story about a man who dared to bargain with God. And using the analysis of Dr. Kenneth Mathews, we're going to break down how this incredible confrontation unfolds.
I mean, really think about this question for a second. At the very heart of this story is this truly astonishing moment where a mortal man, Abraham, stands face to face with God and negotiates for the lives of total strangers. This question right here, it sets up the central conflict we're about to explore.
But before we get to the fire and brimstone, it's so important to understand what this story is really all about. As Dr. Mathews points out, it's this profound lesson on three key themes: the sacred importance of hospitality, the incredible power of interceding for other people, and, maybe most importantly, the intricate balance between God's justice and his mercy.
All right, so our story kicks off not in some big city, but out under the trees of memory. Abraham is just resting in the heat of the day, and then, suddenly, three mysterious men just appear. This sets in motion a crucial, and I mean crucial, test of character. Right away, the narrative sets up this huge contrast between two men. Check this out. Abraham, in the scorching heat of the day, literally runs to welcome his guests. That's a massive sign of honor. But then you have his nephew, Lot. We find him later just sitting passively in the city gate of Sodom, which was the center of commerce and politics. This tiny detail suggests Lot isn't just living near wickedness, he's actually become part of its very structure.
So, who exactly are these three men? Well, the text reveals that one of them is the Lord himself, Yahweh, and the other two are angels. This is what's known as a theophany. It's basically a temporary, visible appearance of God in human form. It's not a permanent thing like the incarnation of Jesus Christ, but a direct physical manifestation for a very specific purpose. So these visitors, they're on a two-part mission. And the first part is deeply personal. They come to Abraham and Sarah's tent to deliver a promise that, on its face, seems completely and utterly impossible. So Sarah overhears this promise of a son, and she just laughs to herself. But it's not a laugh of joy, it's a laugh of pure disbelief. Her inner thought, which we see right here, shows that all she can see are the physical impossibilities of her situation. She's old, Abraham's old, it's just not going to happen. And this is the Lord's powerful response. It's a gentle rebuke, for sure, but it's also the absolute central point of this whole first encounter. It shifts the entire focus away from human limitations and puts it squarely on divine capability. The impossible, it turns out, only seems that way from where we're standing. This moment is a total game changer in their relationship. God decides to treat Abraham not just as a servant, but as a confidant, a friend. And by revealing his plan to destroy Sodom, he's teaching Abraham about his own character, what the text calls the way of the Lord, which is all about righteousness and justice. And this new confidence, this friendship, is what leads to one of the most dramatic dialogues in the entire Bible. Now that Abraham has been brought into God's inner circle, he uses that position not for himself, but to plead for the lives of other people. This is Abraham's opening line, and it is incredibly bold. He appeals directly to God's own character, basically challenging the judge of all the earth to do the right thing. It's a question that comes from this deep compassion for any innocent people who might get caught in the crossfire. So the negotiation begins. Abraham starts with what seems like a pretty reasonable number, 50. If there are just 50 good people in the whole city, will God spare everyone? And the Lord agrees. But Abraham doesn't stop. He keeps going. Respectfully, humbly, but he keeps pushing. What about 45? What about 30? 20? And each time, God says yes. Finally, Abraham gets to his absolute bottom line, 10. If just 10 righteous people can be found, the city will be spared. The tension here is just unbelievable. And this part brilliantly illustrates a key insight from Dr. Mathews. See, Abraham only sees two possibilities. Either option A, destroy everybody, the wicked and the righteous, or option B, spare everybody for the sake of the righteous. But God is operating with a third option that Abraham can't even see yet, a plan that perfectly combines justice and mercy by rescuing the innocent while still holding the wicked accountable. Okay, so now the scene shifts. The two angels arrive in Sodom to investigate for themselves if the outcry against the city is really true. And what they find? Well, it confirms the absolute worst. A mob of men from the city surrounds Lot's house, and they're demanding he bring out his visitors so they can know them. Now, it's really important to understand this term. Just like back in Genesis 4, where it says Adam knew his wife Eve, this is a euphemism for sexual relations. The mob's intent here is violent, it's hostile, and it's a total violation of the sacred laws of hospitality. The situation just explodes. The mob refuses to leave and starts trying to break down the door. And in this flash of divine power, the angels just intervene. They pull Lot inside and strike the men outside with a kind of supernatural blindness, leaving them just funneling around, completely helpless. At this point, the city's wickedness is undeniable. So, the investigation is complete, the verdict is in, and now the final phase of the mission begins. It's a desperate race against time, because judgment is about to fall. But Lot's reaction here is so fascinating. Even with a violent mob at his door and a direct warning from angels, he hesitates. He is so invested in his life in Sodom, his home, his status, his stuff, that he actually can't bring himself to leave. The angels have to physically grab his hand and drag his family out of the city in this incredible act of what you could almost call forced mercy. The command is clear, it's urgent, and it's absolute. Their physical survival depends on it. But the instruction also has this deeper spiritual meaning. They have to completely and totally reject the condemned life that they are leaving behind. And then comes the tragic, iconic moment. Lot's wife, just unable to let go of her old life, disobeys. She looks back. And in that one moment of longing for a condemned world, she becomes part of the desolate landscape. It's this permanent monument to the danger of having a divided heart. In the aftermath, smoke just rises from the plain like smoke from a furnace. The judgment is complete. But the story doesn't end there. It leaves us with these powerful lessons that just echo through time. So, what are the key takeaways from this whole intense story? Well, Dr. Mathews' analysis really points to three big ideas. First, God actually desires a real, personal relationship with people, treating Abraham like a friend. Second, Abraham becomes our model for intercession, using his position to plead on behalf of others. And third, we see that divine action isn't just a simple choice, but that incredible third option that perfectly weaves together justice and mercy. In the end, the entire narrative, this whole epic story, really hangs on this one powerful question. It's a question of faith, of trust, and of the very character of God. And the story of Sodom is the dramatic answer, showing us that even in the middle of terrifying judgment, the judge of all the earth always acts with perfect, if sometimes mysterious, righteousness.